one more pack here. Welcome to the channel where we have a follow-up video on our previous Disney Lorcana Championship video. Now, in the first video, Jason here outlined the deck that he used to win his first local championship. And there's been a lot of question. Well, that's the deck, but what's the strategy? So the first thing, like anyone would say, is, well, you have no credibility to tell us your strategy for using that deck. Go win another championship. Jason, did you go win another championship? Did you go
Yes,
win another championship?
yes, I did. I went out, I drove 2 hours away to find a weeknight game, drove closer to the big city of Toronto, and I brought a friend along with me. We showed up, rolled in, and I took down first place again.
Well done. Well done. Congratulations on the big win. But now you got a little bit of credibility and you need to explain the strategy of your deck. Uh, and that's going to be the main focus of this video here today. But before we do that, I think you should just give a little bit of a summary, a quick summary on the tournament that you went to. Talk to us about the other types of decks you might have saw, some challenges that you faced, and I mean, we all want to know, did you go undefeated?
I didn't just go undefeated. I remain undefeated through two tournaments, have not lost a single round or match. I've lost a game here
Incredible.
or there, but I've always managed to win a best of three.
Yeah, that is incredible. So
Steals,
talk to us about some of the other decks that you played. You are still playing the deck that you previewed in the first video, that's correct?
exact same deck. I mean, if those people had watched the videos, they would have known what was up. Um,
They knew what was coming.
I will say, first off, very different tournament, right? So I live, for those of you not familiar with Canada, we kind of have like big central cities and then kind of smaller cities and towns further away from that. And so I drove in from a smaller city into a much, much bigger area. And when I went to this tournament, it was full of people that had already won. Uh,
Really?
yep, my first or two of my first three opponents had between them like 6 or 7 stitches
Oh,
and multiple champion match. So immediately competition way harder. That was the first notable thing. Uh, I think there's like 3 matches I really want to talk about. The first one was very disappointing because I drove 2 hours and the first person I had to play was the person I drove with.
well, that would be the downside of going with someone to these tournaments because it is every person for themselves.
Yep. I've played this person a whole bunch. You saw him on the last video. This was that my judge friend John T. We practiced together a whole bunch, and we squared up, and we already knew. We've played the matchup so many times, rolled the dice to see who would go first, and that person has won 90% of our matches, and I got to go first. So I managed to beat him in three. He won the game where he went first, which is kind of par for the course for the two of us playing each other. That
Right.
was he plays an Emerald Amethyst deck. It's very like quick, a little bit of bounce package, like the Mims and the Fox, the Rabbit, the Snake, Goat as well, Merlin's in there. And so I just knew right from the get-go, as long as I controlled the board, as long as I kept him off tempo, and as long as I didn't draw him any cards, or as few cards as possible, I would control. Very experienced in that matchup. The person I practiced against in preparation for all these tournaments. Um, Disappointing, but not the result. The result was good.
And then, yeah, you said there's 3 matches you wanted to talk about. Do you want to touch on the other two quickly here?
Yeah, so I played someone playing a deck I've never even seen before, which is if you're practicing, right, and you're getting ready for these things, playing the unknown is very unnerving. So I played someone playing Sapphire Steel. This was that item deck. It had some control elements with the steel. First game was really trying to feel out what or how he played his deck. But you know what I was talking about a little bit in the last video, the card Bare Necessities, right? I get to look at my opponent's hand, I get to discard something. I a whole new worlded on turn 3, so I got us both brand new hands, and I looked at his hand and he had nothing, like truly nothing. So I was like, great, we're gonna play here now, buddy. and I didn't change anything. I drew other whole new worlds and I didn't use them, and I just let him stew inking characters. And blue or sapphire usually plays like ramp. He didn't get any ramp off, so
Oh,
controlled it right from the get-go. Easy win for the games. It still went 3-2, but when I went first, I had him. Or sorry,
amazing.
2-1.
Okay, good stuff. And the third matchup, now was this the final match or was this still in the round robin?
This was the cutoff to win top four and like at least get the Stitch card.
Okay.
And this was a deck I mentioned not seeing in the last video, which is my absolute bane of my existence, which is Ruby Sapphire. The deck
Counter to your deck.
100%. I can't go fast enough for it. I can't I can't go slow enough to beat it. It just has all the answers. And game one, I got a little bit ahead. I managed to find his board wipes, his be prepareds, and just discard them, and he couldn't deal with me going wide. Game two, he did what his deck does. I didn't stand a chance. Very quick win for him. And game three was a little bit different because I made a lot of decisions that I think other people were watching us play. We were the last people playing, and people were like, "What are you doing?" But I had a strategy. I was discarding his low value, their popsicles, this one cost draw one card. I was using my discard abilities on that to keep him from drawing, and that won me the matchup.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that you changed the strategy on the fly for that specific opponent. And you found like how can you stop if you have a kryptonite, like how do you stop that, right? And it's very impressive.
Yeah. I did we were talking because I in a couple different instances I looked like I had him down and out and he would find an answer or find a play, and he was telling me afterwards that he had actually come back multiple times down 19-0. And he was just like, "Nope, my deck doesn't need to give up. Like I can always find an answer." And he's like, "And for you, I just like it just was one turn away."
That truly incredible. And then, so obviously there was several matches to go, and you ended up the champion, which is incredible. Congratulations again. You're 2 for 2.
Yeah.
Um, at the time of this recording, you do still have 2 tournaments on the horizon.
Hmm.
So that will be very exciting to see how you do. I mean, if people are watching this video, they are going to know your strategy because we are about to get into it. The strategy that you use with the Steel and Song deck. The Song and
Yeah.
Steel and Song. Do you care how I say that?
I say Steelsong.
Steel Song. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're watching this video, you're getting ready for your store champs. I think most people have their tournaments coming up this weekend. The one I'm the most excited about, the biggest one, is on Saturday. That's the store I locally play at, so I don't have to drive out of town for it. And I'm gonna bring this
And you
deck.
won't be an outsider.
Yes, for the first time.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if any outsiders show up to your store looking to steal your Stitch cards.
Probably, I would imagine. I mean, 32 people is a lot for a tournament.
Oh yeah,
So we'll see.
nice.
But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the strategy behind this deck. I mean, when you're
So let's.
talking, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say let's maybe begin by just talking about right off the bat. You're drawing cards. You have the chance to mulligan. What are you looking for in a starting hand with this deck?
So I get nervous when I'm playing this deck because there's 17 uninkable cards, 17 cards that without coming out at the right time are dead to me kind of thing. So I would say there's two primary mulligan kind of plans. The first one is I want one of my one cost cards. I want a Cinderella, I want the Queen, and or a Robin Hood. Those cards, getting them on board, it's useful for me as the player to have something on board. And I think everyone that's listening to this probably knows, oh yeah, of course having something on board's better. But the other thing it does, because all three of those cards shift into something bigger, it forces my opponent to start strategizing against something I may or may not have, and they just don't know.
Yeah.
So it makes them uncomfortable, and that makes it better for me.
Maybe I'll pause you right there and maybe we can put a graphic on the screen. You talked about how the majority of your cards are not inkable. You said about 17. So maybe
Mhm.
let's just put a graphic on the screen and we can show And I know maybe when we went over this a little bit, you went over this a little bit in the previous video when you just showed what your deck was.
Yeah.
Um, but in the middle table, you can see here in the middle graph, sorry, the pie chart, you can see the difference between inkable and non-inkable cards.
17 might not sound like a lot in a 62 card deck, but half of them cost 5 or 4. And when you're starting the game, you just desperately need to not see those cards.
And you're just under 30% of your cards, right?
Basically,
So
yeah.
it is a big chunk. Okay, so let's talk about the main strategy. So how do you win a game? So we know that
Well,
there's
well, sorry,
fast.
I'm gonna
Oh,
interject
sorry.
real quick. So there's a second part to the mulligan strategy that I think is really important with this current meta. First is keep the shift pieces. If I get a big version, I keep it. If I get a small version, I keep it. One or the other is ink, and then maybe I can shift out. The last thing I want to say though is if my opponent is playing emerald, it and I don't know what kind of emerald it is, I discard every song.
Oh,
In a
okay.
Steelsong deck, I have no songs in hand because losing a song to their turn 2 Ursula every single time will can like derail the entire deck strategy. So that's a huge part of this current meta. You see Emerald, you just let him go, and hopefully they come back.
Obviously, in the first game of three, you wouldn't know if they had Emerald or not unless you knew your opponent and what they've been playing in the tournament, correct? So you might walk into someone, play game one, keep a song in your hand. Game two, they're all gone because you know they have an Emerald deck.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to scout it out as best I can. I'm not like, ducking and looking to see if I can get them shuffle in and try to catch.
How would you
Uh,
know?
but as soon as my games are done, I start walking around. I'm not memorizing people's decks or anything, but I definitely want to know the color combo I'm up against before I play because that greatly affects how I mulligan.
I mean, we're in the conversation of strategy, and at the end of the day, this is a game and you are trying to win. And in any type of game you're trying to win, there's ways to get information. And if you can use that information to your benefit, why wouldn't you? So even if you just shook someone's hand, said hello, how's it going? This is what I do, this is what I play. Maybe they're just going to volunteer that information for you.
Yeah, but then I have to volunteer the information of what I'm playing.
I mean, if you're confident in your deck,
Yeah. No one said, "Oh, I recognize you from YouTube" yet, so I haven't been too worried about it.
let's change that. Sorry, let's go into so I kind of wanted to get into another topic. So the mulligan was a big one. I think it's important for people to have, and I think those were two great pieces of advice when at the very beginning of a game when you're looking to mulligan your hand and what to keep and what not to keep. But then I wanted to talk about on the tempo of your game. Are you trying to win as quickly as possible with this deck? As you're trying to like drag the game out as long as possible? Or are you trying to kind of fit right into the middle? Like where does this deck lie in terms of tempo?
I think that's a really good question. And it really depends on the matchup. So again, there are decks that are slower than mine that win long. And my deck has enough stuff early, like with the shifting of the targets to get those two questers out, that I can go fast if I need to. When I was playing the Ruby Amethyst person, I just went wide, wide, wide. I just kept playing card. And it's like, and I'm just gonna keep questing, and I'm just gonna keep questing, and I'm just gonna keep questing, and my lord just kept ticking up. And it was just like maybe there was a trade on board, maybe there was something I would have done in a different scenario, but against this specific deck, it was go, 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 go. My deck has the ability to do that because I can shift out Queen on turn 2, because I can shift out Robin Hood on turn 3, and because I can shift out Cinderella on turn 5. And if I'm playing a Lantern, maybe I'm getting a Beast out on turn 4, maybe I'm getting something a little bit earlier. The other portion of this, I would say, is because I sing a lot, like the deck is built around the tempo play of singing a card without exerting any ink. A lot of the times, what I'm looking to do is to simply clear their board over and over and over again. And then after their board has been cleared, oh, they got nothing on board? Great. Now I'll quest.
Oh, that definitely makes sense. It's good to have some kind of adaptability if you can go fast and slow in different scenarios. Um, and really, so then a big strategy of this deck, would you say, is actually just controlling the tempo?
Yeah. Being the
Very
one in control is how this deck wins. If I have to play purely reactionary, I I would say it doesn't lose, but it goes from, a 60-70% win rate to like a 40% win rate. So I'm losing some matches I wish I could get back.
Can you just touch on it a little bit more on how do you gain control and how do you keep control in the
Sure.
middle of a game?
Yeah, there's a few ways. Again, very dependent on their board, but a lot of the time what I find is kind of a trap for people is I will offer up cards, like, and make cards vulnerable to prevent them from doing something. So a really good example is Cinderella, Ballroom Sensation, and Ariel, Spectacular Singer. These cards people know are good. They don't want me to sing songs, and they want them gone immediately. They're in their heads, they're like, no, these two cards are the cards that are going to annoy me the most. They're going to beat me. And so sometimes if I have a move coming up that I think will work better, if maybe one of their cards has a damage on it or something of that nature, where get them to expose a card to me because I've exposed a card to them for challenging, I will set those traps. And there's times where it's like, oh, my ballroom sensation Cinderella sings or does a quest for one, and they're like, well, I can kill that for free. They take one damage on their character, and then I have a 2 damage spell that finishes them off. Um,
Right.
if a deck is super fast and they're quest, and they have the chance of like beating me just on the how quickly they can quest, sometimes I'll start questing as well because they'll want to trade all of a sudden, and the act of them trading means they're not questing. And so I use
So
my own cards as bait.
yeah, you're almost forcing them to go, oh, you want to get to 21st? Well, I'm going to get to 21st. And now they're going, wait. Can he has a way to get there quicker? And then they try to start slowing down, trying to react to what you're doing.
And that just plays into my hand.
That's like it is. I hope that the people listening can kind of follow along and kind of see and I don't know if we can do a better job at giving some examples. Those were two good examples there, and I think it's just important to be more versatile and go, well, you can use these same examples with any deck you use. It doesn't have to just be this deck. Maybe just the idea of putting something up as bait, maybe changing somebody's strategy midway through the game can kind of work with any deck and throw them off. So maybe this is just good advice for any Lorcana player with whatever deck they're playing. Um, so I have another question, and this is, you said something earlier about one of your matchups where the person you were playing said uh, they've come back from down 19-0.
Mhm.
When do you know? So that I'm assuming, now this is just an assumption, the person playing on the other side got to 19 because they went all out. They got to a point where they're like, I'm going for the win. I'm going to get there. I'm going to win. And they came up one short and they made a misplay. And then he played a card that potentially set them way too far behind to ever get anything back onto the board. So when do you know to go for the win? Do you do the math in your head? Do you go, okay, in 3 turns, I'm going to get to 20, or in 4 turns, I'm going to get to 20? Or like, how do you know when it's time? Make that killing blow, go for the win.
I think I'm always doing the math. If you're if you've played chess before, advice number one, always check for checks, right? To see if you can check your opponent. It's the same thing, Lorcana. Always add up, even if you know you're not going to do it, just do the math in your head. How much lore could I gain right now? What is the amount of lore they can't prevent? And so during the game, if it's we'll take obvious situations out of the way, right? Where I'm already ahead, or let's say it's like tight, we're both at like 10 or 11. If I do the math and I'm like, okay, if I quest with everything right now and I play a new character that, let's say, quest for 2 and I go to 16, well, they need to remove all the characters I just quested with. And if they don't, I win. And then if they do, I still have this other 2 person left that can get me to 18, which they'll then have to remove. And so basically what I try to do is put people in a position where they essentially are forced to do something they don't want to do so that they have to do the math. And if they don't do the math, I win. And you're just constantly trying to set up these little choke points of progression where it's like, okay, you're at 11, I'm at 11, but if I quest first, how are you going to respond? If you go first, well then yeah, I'm trailing you and then you have that win condition.
Yeah.
There's tricky spots where there's times where you know what? It's like, hey, I'm gonna quest for, and get myself to 17. I'll put something on the board, and this is just the only way I win is if you can't deal with this. That happens, you just got to give yourself the only out you have. But I think something people miss out on a lot, and especially I'm watching people play aggro decks, count every turn. Sometimes you just like you get to 16, you have a goat in hand. Well, 16, well, that goat's automatically 17 and 18, maybe even 17, 18, 19, depending on the deck you're playing against. So you've got to constantly be looking at, can they even stop this if I just ignored them from here on out?
Right. And you can see that even just with, if we just brought this down to the simplest form, and you had, let's just put you in a position where if you quest everything you have and it gets you to 18, and then you put a card down that does 2 damage or can quest for 2, sorry, not damage, can quest for 2, and just leave it as it is, and they can't attack it, they can't challenge it, well, then you automatically win. If they can't deal with that card, you just automatically win next turn,
Yeah,
right?
we'll even go like, okay, so let's say you're playing against Ruby. You quest to 18, you drop that card, and you're like, well, you have to clear this card and everything I just quested with, or you lose. And then they be prepared and they wipe the board. If you don't have another two quester in your hand, then that was a mistake.
Right. Yes.
If you have another two quester in your hand, then that was fine because you're just going to play that and be like, well, can you do it again?
Yeah.
I would say the part that separates people that are going to win sometimes versus people that are going to win a lot would not just be having that other two quester in your hand, would be having two other any questers in your hand. Because Ruby plays a bunch of cards that can be a single play, kill one of your two things. And so you need to be thinking about, okay, if the worst happens, what's my next turn look like? And so let's say that same situation, right? I quest up to 18. If my board is bigger than their board and they already can't trade everything, and I do a little bit of math and I'm like, okay, if they play a Maui or a Scar, no, it still doesn't work. They still can't trade for everything. Their only option is to wipe both of our boards. Then there's literally no reason to play that two quester to expose eat to any kind of counter strategy. Keep that in your hand. Keep it tight to the chest and keep the information.
I really like what you said there about the looking for checks. I'm a chess player, you know that. You got me into it. And it's so true, right? Like if you're not thinking about how to win every single turn, and maybe not turn one, but you should be coming up with, I can win in 3 turns. I can win in 2 turns. I can win in 1 turn. And if you're constantly thinking that way, you're going to come out on the other side winning more than losing. Because if you're just playing to just, oh, if I do this, if I do that, you might not be finding the optimal play every single time. Um, let's keep it moving here. I wanted to talk more specifically about the cards in your deck.
Mhm.
Now this is I say it the wrong way every time. A Steelsong
Yep.
deck, and there are different variations of this deck.
Yes.
So, what is the variation that you play? And then we can start talking about the cards in that variation. And like when you were saying about exposing the beast to damage or something like that, we can start getting into that kind of conversation. So, what's the variation of the Steelsong deck that you play?
So I went through the whole deck in my last video that we put out, and I'm not going to go through every card here, but there's some cards in every version of this deck. So when we look here at the deck list, Cinderella, Ariel, Beast, Robin Hood, those are in every version. Whole New World, Along Came Zeus, Storm Rage On, Bare Necessities, Grab Your Sword, Strength of Raging Fire. different amounts, but in every version. The thing that sets my version specifically apart is the lantern, and that is this ramping tool that puts my opponent in awkward situations. And what I mean by awkward situations is my deck will play a lantern, and then hopefully at some point within the next couple turns, discard both hands and draw everyone back up to 7 with a whole new world, and then we start over again. Except now I have a lantern. So I have one more thing to play than you do, one more ink to use, and then I play a second lantern. And then I do it again. And now I've got 2 more resources than you do. And my deck, if you look, we can look back at the chart we looked at before. It is bogged down with 5 cost, high quality characters. So my version is let's wipe the slate clean, and I am consistently playing stuff that is worth more on board than yours is because my bigger costs.
Amazing. So what did you have to sacrifice in order to put those 4 lanterns into your deck?
There is a very similar play with Pride Lands. It does a very similar thing. I just think of the 2 options that are very similar. Mine is better. So I'm not going to get into Pride Lands because it's very close. There's some people that would go the other way, and they have a really good point with Pride Lands gets you lore. That's fine. I'm just going to stick to, I would say between the 2, they're very close. And it's Lantern all day. The other version of this deck that is really competitive, that actually came in 3rd in that last tournament I was just playing, was the same deck as mine. We're very close, but it played 4 flutes. Flute is if you play a song on this turn, you can tap it once to gain a lore. So it's hard to interact with. You can only get rid of it with item removal, which is limited almost exclusively to steel. And once someone with the flutes gets started, they're really hard to stop. The reason I didn't go with that version, the reason I stuck to this was I felt like this version beats that version. This version can find a way to win more like assorted types of matchups than that version can. Because honestly, Flutes is better against the stuff I'm weak against. It will dominate Ruby Sapphire. The problem is when you're going into a tournament, you're not just preparing for 1 or 2 decks, you have to prepare for all of the decks. And so this version of the deck doesn't just give you a good chance to win a matchup or 2. This deck gives you a good chance to win against anybody. And if you're going to win multiple championship mats, you need to beat everybody.
Like it. I like it. I like you threw that in there because you have multiple mats. That is
I do now.
It's why we're here and it's why we're talking about this. Is there any card specifically that you want to talk about? Is there any strategy revolving around any specific cards? You briefly mentioned it was baiting was the term I was looking for. Is there any cards you want to talk about that you like to do that, or did you already say kind of everything you were about that specifically?
No, there is actually some pretty good baiting cards in this deck that people forget about, I would say. Robin Hood is an interesting one. Robin Hood, when he defeats another character, when he banishes it, you gain 2 lore. So he doesn't need to he can get his questing lore by just challenging over and over again. And I think everyone's kind of on top of that and they're worried about it and whatever. And, but sometimes Robin Hood's second effect is actually more valuable to me than his first. His second effect is when this character is banished in a challenge, you may draw a card. There are times where the Robin Hood on board is worth less than me getting 1 more card because I see the line and I'm like, the way the board is right now, I'm going to lose. I need to start anything I can to fish for more cards is how I get to winning. So you quest with Robin Hood, you expose him to, getting challenged. Maybe you lose him. But if you do, you get the card, and that is really valuable. And you also got the 2 lore. That's 10% of what you need to win the game. Another one is we kind of talked about the Ariel and Cinderella, how to expose them to getting challenged. Sometimes I do that as like a three-step play. One, expose them. Two, they get challenged and banished. Three, I challenge someone else's card. I guess a four-step play, which leaves damage on my character. And then I play Rapunzel step 4. She heals my character back to full, and I draw more cards. And anytime you're drawing more cards, especially in a deck like this that really uses those cards and tempos them out really well, I mean, it's pretty valuable.
Awesome. Awesome stuff. I think that's like from a strategy standpoint and how to put this deck together, like after putting this deck together, how to play it, I should say. I think we covered everything. If you don't have anything more else to add, I'd like to say congratulations again on win number 2. And good luck this weekend with your 2 more, your local championship, and then one more out of town one, was it?
I mean, it's semi-local. It's just out of town. I've been there a bunch of times.
Awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, I got nothing left to say. Thanks so much for watching.
Perfect. Good luck this weekend, everyone.
Like and subscribe. One more pack.
Oh, yeah.